I feel like the art of cutting up a human body is something that I'm probably unhealthily fascinated by, but I do have a deep love of pathology. Unfortunately, I haven't done science since I was 16, so I would never be able to have a career as a pathologist, but I love reading about it. And when I saw Unnatural causes advertised on the Underground, I had to get my hands on a copy straight away, and I did, and I love it. I think testament to how much I adored this book is the fact that I'm doing a standalone video review of this. I rarely video review a book on its own. I usually do it as part of a series, a collective reviews. But Unnatural Courses by Dr. Richard Shepard absolutely has to have its own video. So this is a book recently published by Penguin, and there are two main reasons why I love this. One, the level of detail when describing pathology, and two, the fact that it calls upon real life cases that we can then go and research online afterwards to kind of heighten the experience and make it a lot more interesting. So this is not necessarily a guide to pathology, but we do get to follow Dr. Richard Shepard's career as he starts out in pathology and then goes on to specialise in forensic pathology, and also goes on to specialise even more specifically in knife crime and deaths related to knife attacks. Through his journey, as we follow his career, we learn a lot about anatomy and how pathology has changed over the years, not just because of technology and the way that we learn more as a society about things, but also the way the human body has developed. There's a small section dedicated to, it's about a paragraph long, about how humans carry more weight to them nowadays than they did in the 80s. And that changes the way that pathological procedures are kind of approached. And it's really fascinating to think that when he started his career, things are nothing like what they are now. And it's such an interesting journey to follow with him. So in terms of the level of detail, we do get to see or read a lot about the human body and how a post-mortem is conducted. And it starts off slicing down the collarbone, and it's so incredible to read, and it takes us through the steps of what's examined. This is on a generic post-mortem rather than when they're focusing on a specific body part. This is doing a thorough examination and what is found on the inside of the body, and it's very tastefully done. It's not graphic, it's not gruesome, but obviously if you're squeamish or maybe not a fan of thinking about the intestines, you might not be very comfortable with it. But personally, I thought it was absolutely incredible. Now, me describing this book as perfect is quite a big statement for me to be making, because I read a lot of books about forensics, about the anatomy and pathology and post-mortems. So I have a very particular, it's an odd slip of the tongue there, very particular taste in what I'm looking for when it comes to such books. I like them to be written a certain way, and my goodness, this book was written in that way. And another thing is that it's grammatically perfect. Even today, from big publishers, it's very rare that a book is actually well written and grammatically sound. And I don't think I spotted a single grammatical error in this book, which is a massive bonus. In addition to the actual postmortems, we get to have a little look inside some court cases. Now, I'm very obsessed with the Crown Prosecution Service. I think it's just so fascinating, such a great thing to study. And we get to see how some of these post-mortems then need to be testified in court, and some of the outcomes as well. And that was really fascinating to kind of read about how what's done on the table is then transferred to the actual case, and what impact that those findings can have, and what weight is carried with the pathologist's opinion. So in terms of being fully immersive in the world of pathology, it's really brilliant. And then we have the real life cases. Now, there were a lot of, it's basically anecdotal. Everything is a bit of a memoir, obviously, as the nature of the author's, not author's story, author's career. But what I loved about it specifically is that it called upon some pretty big national stories. Some of the scales are very kind of personal, with one person shooting somebody else, never really made big news. And then we have things like the Clapham rail crash and the Marchioness boat collision on the Thames, which killed, I think, over 100 people. It was a horrific thing, and I'd not heard of that one before, and now I have, and it's really interesting to read about, and obviously a very horrific thing. And surprisingly as well, it also looks at the death of Princess Diana, and he wasn't the pathologist on that case, but there's a lot of information about it, and how the death occurred, physically how the death occurred, and what the impact would have done, and also to the other people in the car as well. And it's certainly an angle I've never looked at before. And it also looks at 9/11, there's a lot of information in here that if you're interested in crime and national and international tragedies, it's certainly a really fascinating way of looking at them from a new angle. I'm gushing. I know I'm absolutely gushing about this book. I am so passionate about it. I feel like everybody has to read it. When I read a book about pathology, postmortems, anatomy, forensics, that strikes a chord in my heart, I know that I will love it for life. And if you like any of that kind of thing, you have to read it. Brilliant, such a fantastic book. I've basically heard nothing but positive things about it. So I can't think of a reason why it shouldn't be read, unless of course you're very squeamish and don't really want details of what happens to the lungs when you're a heavy smoker, or what happens to the body when you're in a serious collision. For me though, it is perfect. It's everything that I look for. Thank you so much to Penguin for publishing this, and to Dr. Richard Shepherd for writing this. It's an incredible journey he's been on. I'd love to sit down with him and just discuss a lot of these stories with him, because he's had such a fascinating career, and this book is one of the best books that I've ever read.